Welcome to the Modern Hippie podcast, where we'll be exploring all of my favorite boundary-pushing people and topics surrounding consciousness, psychedelics, mental performance, functional medicine, living in alignment, and so much more. I'm your host, Barrett Perlman, a former pro wakeboarder turned body worker, energy healer, and well, a modern hippie. And I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Modern Hippie podcast. I am here with Nichole Ferro, who is an embodied breathwork facilitator, a medicine woman, a womb expert. You're just this all-around badass at healing people and bringing the medicine in to help people heal trauma and alchemize their lives, alchemize their experience. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's an honor. Thank you so much for having me here. I can't wait to dive in. I really appreciate you asking me to be on here with you.
Of course. So for you guys, that I did your embodied breathwork facilitator training this past month. And that was like 6 days of training and deep breathwork. And we learned 12 different styles of breath.
Typically we learn 10, but yeah, you guys had a bonus and learned a few extra ones. So yeah, I think it was about 12 breathwork styles that you learned.
Which was awesome. It was powerful. So if you listen to the other episodes, I did one with Bishop Reed, and she does like a somatic breathwork experience. And so I interviewed her about that. So my only experience had been with psychedelic type breathwork.
Interesting, yeah.
And so what I loved about your training was that I got to learn breathworks for just like everyday things that you have going on, like
totally
fever, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, muscle cramps. Like, want to raise your energy? Here's a breath. Want to calm yourself down? Here's a breath.
Exactly. That's what's so potent about the breath and so powerful, is that different styles of breath can meet us where we're at, and it can ultimately support our needs in every moment. It can shift our state of being whenever we need that shift, whether more energy, whether to calm down, whether to shift a mindset or an emotion, whatever it might be. It's like not one fits all. So we have an array of styles that we can use for everyday life.
And what drew you to breathwork?
Well, first, my roots come from yoga and like pranayama style practices. And so I've always been fascinated with the breath in yoga. It's the only thing that helped me to really anchor in my body and to bring me into the present moment so that I could actually feel safe in my body. Because, you know, we live in a culture that's very disassociated from the body. And when I started 11 years ago, I was too, you know, and so yoga, breathing, pranayama practices really anchored me in and then helped me to heal my asthma, helped me to calm my mind, again, helped me to really have more self-awareness around all my actions. And so it just continued to evolve from there. And then these more modern style practices started to evolve. And my first time I tried it was probably like, I don't know, 6 years ago in the UK with this guy that I did a training with. And I was just like, what is this? This is like, I mean, I went into past lives. I went into like, I had all these beautiful visions. I laughed like how I never laughed before in my life. I cried like I've never cried before in my life. And I was just like, wow, this is magic. Like, how could my breath possibly take me here?
Right.
And so from there, it just kept evolving and molding, and I just kept learning, and it's just been a really beautiful healing practice for me.
Oh, it sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
When you learned the breath, had you already done plant medicines?
I had done a little bit of plant medicine. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Before when I did that really modern holotropic style breathwork practice, I had done some psychedelics and medicine work.
Interesting. And how would you compare breathwork to plant medicines?
You know, depending on what the plant medicine is, it's similar because it takes you into different states of consciousness where you can gather information beyond the logical thinking mind that we use every day. And it brings you into places where you didn't even know you needed to go. And that's always what the medicine does. You know what I mean? And so breathwork is its own medicine, and it has that similar effect for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I noticed about it too. And one of the reasons I wanted to get my facilitator training was that I work so much with plant medicine, specifically with mushrooms. And so I'm always, I don't know, you could say I'm always trying to convince people to tap into the mycelium with me to do the mushrooms. But I'm always sort of letting people know it's there. But a lot of people are not ready for that. And for me, I desire to bring them breath work because it's less scary. People are like, oh, it's just the breath. Like, what can it possibly do? Well, surprise, guys. It can do a lot. And, what's your favorite style of breath?
You know, I don't think I have one favorite style. It really does just depend on what I need. If I'm really looking, if I'm like in a state where I really need to shift something that's big, like I feel really heavy or dense, or like I'm trying to process some bigger emotions such as grief or fear or sadness or anything like that, I always go to the more holotropic style breath. So maybe just one inhale through the mouth and out, that style, or the 3-part. And just find my rhythm and just keep going and going and going. And then just let it all come out. Use lots of sound. I think that sound is our own unique, potent medicine. And when we can tap into that and find freedom in our voice with our breath, that is an alchemy for healing.
Oh, I love that. And you developed something that you call the void retention.
Yes.
Tell me about that and how you added that into the breath.
Yes, thank you. And I know that's something you absolutely love,
too. I love it. I love holding my breath.
It's so funny. We're always taught, like, don't hold your breath. Now hold your breath. It's like, okay, well, it depends on when and where. But the void, ultimately, I discovered on my own. I just would get myself into a really deep place in my breathwork practice, and then I would feel like, okay, I feel like I need to pause. Like, I don't need to breathe anymore right now in this moment. And so I would exhale fully and then just stay there for a little bit of time, and you could still feel the vibration. I feel like I could connect more to the vibration in my body. Like, because I was paused and I was paying attention now to my body and not just my breath. And it felt so like surrendered, and it felt like a place of nothing but everything at once. And it's the void. It's like where everything is birthed from. So from that place, it's like everything gets so quiet. And then from that silence, it's like, an aha moment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how it was for me. And so I just wanted to share and hope that other people have that same experience, which for the most part, that has been the feedback.
Yeah.
And what about you? How does it land for you? I'm curious.
Well, it was great because our opening night for the facilitator training, you took us through the 3-part breath with the void retention. And that was my first time doing the void retention. And I loved it because I love holding my breath. I've done a lot of free diving training.
Totally.
And then for surfing, holding your breath is super important. Feeling comfortable holding your breath, having been denied of oxygen before that, super important. So when we got to the part where we like exhaled and held, I love sitting in that discomfort. Yeah. So for me, it was comfortable to get close to like 45 seconds, a minute on the exhale. And the tingling and the power reminded me so much of being in the plant medicine, which for me is like really connecting to the universe. And that tingling and that feeling of safety, that feeling of being held by unconditional love. And so I commend you because I think that's such a beautiful development. I don't know how many people can say they've developed a breathwork practice that they teach and have coined, and getting goosebumps saying this.
I love how you brought in like being held by the divine, because that is something that I always say, like it feels like you get to connect directly to source energy when you're in that void. And it does feel like you're held in this very soft way. And it's, that was my experience. And I'm just like, oh, people need to feel this.
Yeah, they do. And so I do want to touch on, you have another breathwork facilitator training coming up in October.
Yes.
And that will be here in Southern California. In Costa Mesa, Behind the Lids.
Yeah, so it starts October 7th. It's 2 weekends back to back. So weekend of October 7th, weekend of October 14th, in Costa Mesa at Behind the Lids.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right now we're actually offering $200 off until August 26th, if this is playing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I highly recommend it.
Thank
It was a
you.
really powerful training, and you're so detailed in your information. Like, I definitely walked away being like, okay, I'm ready. I didn't think I was going to be ready to just take people on, but I'm ready.
Beautiful. That's amazing. I'm really, really happy to hear that, because I wanted it to be delivered in a way where not only did you learn the breath and the power of it, but you felt confident to go ahead and share it with the world.
Yeah. Well, and that last day, so on the last day, she has us basically teach the group class for like 15 minutes and then do individuals. And so everyone's kind of bouncing around doing an individual session. And then once everyone's done with the individuals, the whole group comes.
Yeah.
And it was shocking for me because, as you know, there were like 6 people in the group at first. And then as I went to go, it was like, oh, most people are done with the one-on-ones. Cool. Now here's a group of like 15 people. And I was like, and I get such nerves. So I was just like a bundling ball of nerves, like walking around all day, just trying to get to it. But then it came, and it was so cool to hold that space and to get that practice of, especially in a group.
Where you feel safe.
Yeah. And to walk around and see everyone and try and figure out like who's having an experience. Is someone having a meltdown, or are they having an experience? Who's doing fine?
Totally. It's a lot to hold.
Yeah. And so you're also a medicine woman. What does that mean to you?
You know, it's interesting because technically, yes, I went through a program with a woman from the UK, 2 years, to become a certified womb medicine woman. And I do feel as though I that is part of my medicine and part of my gift. And do I call myself the title medicine woman? I don't, but other people do, and so I just let that be. And I think that I have connection to that shamanic medicine woman style of work, that I really resonate with that. I'm sorry, your question, what does it mean to me?
Yeah, well, I guess maybe what does it mean to, what is a medicine woman?
Yeah, I think a medicine woman is has their own unique style, and she is somebody who is connected deeply to the earth, connected deeply to the elements, connected deeply to the processes of healing. She is in alignment always with unconditional love and trust and compassion, and is really there to see the vision of healing for herself and for others and for the world and for the earth, and hold that vision the best that she can for other people to step into their healing and their power.
I love that description. And do you think a medicine woman is like different from a shaman?
I think there's a little bit of a difference. Yeah, I feel as though a shaman has, you kind of like are birthed into a family of shamans kind of thing, or like you've lived in the jungle for years upon years upon years, and it's kind of been your entire lifestyle from like when you were born kind of thing, or pretty early on. I think there's a little bit of a difference there. Like, I wouldn't claim to be a shaman at all. I think shamans have it's just a different power that they hold. It's one of the most oldest ancient practices that we have.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a little bit of a difference. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you do womb work. What is womb work?
The beautiful womb. It's so many different things. So womb work is a reclamation of ourselves as women. Okay. It's reclaiming our cyclical nature and literally taking the patriarchy out of our system. That's womb work.
Interesting.
Yes. It's as women, like, you know, right now we're talking about heart consciousness all the time, right? Like, let's connect to the heart consciousness, or even gut consciousness, whatever it might be. There's womb consciousness, and for women it's the most potent and powerful portal that she can connect to. We're not connected to that anymore. We put ibuprofen to numb the pain, we take birth control, we stuff things up there, and it's just like everything numbs it, contracts it, keeps it completely blocked. When we start to open up through our womb space, we find that there's so much magic and medicine and wisdom within there once we start healing. And the first way to start healing is understanding your cycle, understanding your cyclical nature, processing any sort of trauma that's been there, whether emotional trauma, sexual trauma, our womb's like a junk drawer, so it latches and soaks up all energy around us, and when it's filled up with a bunch of junk, we're blocked in our creativity, we're blocked in our purpose, we're blocked in our connection to our divine self. And so it's just a way for women to reclaim their sovereignty.
And what does womb work look like? Is it massage? Is it energy? What does it look like?
Yeah, so it's a various different things. So one, again, would just be like to maybe come off the pill and do some cycle coaching kind of stuff. Like that would be maybe step one. Step two would be just start to really connect with it, place your hands on it. Like I'll have women work with me, and the first thing we do is put their hands on the womb, and then boom, there's a crying, because there's like a remembering and an acknowledgement of like, oh, I've forgotten. And so yes, some of it entails massage, touch, yoni steaming. If they work with me, I'll do a bit of sound and drumming, and we'll really get deep in there with a lot of deep touch and move that stagnation out through sound, through breath, through drums. That's a lot of it. Meditation, visualizing the colors that are in there. There's so many different ways, but those are a few techniques that I use.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, it's really fun and amazing.
I've only had my womb worked on a couple times.
Okay, how was that for you?
It's wild. I have a medicine woman, massage energy healer down in Guatemala who was the first to do it, which I know you also go to Guatemala a lot. So one of the things I love about you. And yeah, she did it, and it was shockingly powerful. She would hit these points around my belly button and hold, and I would be sure she was trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And I get so tapped in there that I remember that the first time she worked on it, like I called in my spirit guide, because I was like, I can't do this. And he's just like sitting there stroking my head, you know, and just going, breathe, Mija, breathe. And breathing through it, and just like eventually I felt like this explosion of just a release from this point she was touching on my belly, and like crazy. I was like, I didn't know all that was there. Are you sure you didn't break me?
Are you sure you're going to be okay?
But it was all fine. It was all great. And then this past year, I had my fallopian tubes removed as part of the female reproductive system. And so I had a womb massage like a week after that to start facilitating the healing with my best friend, who's a healer also. And that was also insanely, wildly powerful. I also thought we broke me at one point. Like I went home and felt worse. And then the next day I felt leaps and bounds better.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of the trauma from the surgery stuck.
Yes.
And I did a lot of work around telling my body it's okay. There's part of me missing now, but that's okay. Like the rest of us are still going to function.
100%.
And I wrote an ode to my fallopian tubes as a send off, and just so I understand the power of that womb work. It would be interesting to go deeper.
Yeah, and I love that you wrote a poem, and you know, just because the physical parts of it there, it's like women that have had hysterectomies, it's like even though that organ is gone, the energetics of it is still there. Like you still have the magical wisdom of those specific parts that were in your body. The energy doesn't leave. And it's interesting when you were talking about how she was pressing on my belly and like all this stuff came up. It just reminds me of the somatic intelligence that we have, like implicit memory. Our body carries all this memory, even if our mind doesn't want to recall it, if it's disassociated from it because it's too painful or we don't feel supported to actually go into it. But the body's like, I'm storing this and I'm remembering all of it. And when we do that deeper somatic work, we can process all those things that linger and get stagnant.
And so would you say that's like the definition of somatic intelligence, like the emotions getting stuck in the body that you don't necessarily even remember?
One of the layers of somatic intelligence. Yeah. So definitely emotional stuff getting stuck in the body, physical pain, that being, stuck in the body. Like recently I've hurt my back, and like I know exactly what emotion and energy that's related to, and I'm working on healing that right now. But it's like, as soon as it happened, I was a little thrown off, and then I knew it was to something else. And when I had one of my best friends who's also a medicine woman work on it, and it was like so clear on what it was, and like the pain immediately subsided. And now it's like just healing some of the physical stuff that lingered around it, you know? And so it's just, that's a somatic intelligence, when the body's like, hey, listen to me. There's something wrong and you're going to ignore it. So I'm going to tell you where it is.
Right.
Yeah, there's so many layers to somatic intelligence: emotions, feelings, physical symptoms, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's my favorite thing about like the work I do with massage
yes.
is really digging into trauma healing with people, digging into those muscles to release the stuff that they don't even realize is
Yep.
stored there. Yesterday I was giving a bunch of mushroom massages. And
yes. Oh my gosh. I need to hear more about this.
yeah, so this is a thing I do where normally a mushroom massage for me by definition is me on mushrooms doing my work as a massage therapist and energy healer.
And the mushrooms are guiding you. You're kind of using them as a guidance, like a support system to like really dive in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I find, I probably take about 3 grams usually when I do this, maybe.
Which is wild. Like that's a pro right there. 3 grams, I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, I aim for 2, but then I always panic as they're kicking in and I take a little more just because I'm...
She goes the opposite. I panic. I'm like, I should have took less.
Yeah. I'm always like, I didn't take enough. And then the next thing I know, I'm on 5 grams and I'm like, whoops.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
But so yeah, like learning to... It's like the perfect complement to my work. Because normally I do massage, I'm tapped in, I'm listening to people's bodies. I give intuitive deep tissue massages, kind of what I call my specialty. But when I'm on mushrooms, it's like the matrix opens. And now the massage is a little less about what you think you need and more about what I'm tapping into your body and seeing and touching and feeling that you need. And yesterday was a delight because both of my clients were also on mushrooms.
Wow.
And I think
did they take the same amount?
My first client took 2 grams.
Okay.
And then my second client, she's a sender also, and so she, I dosed the first client, and so she showed up, and I think she probably took around 3 grams herself.
Okay.
Because she also panicked and took more. And
I love it.
So if you've never received a massage on mushrooms, it's a beautiful like mind, body, spirit experience.
Well, we're gonna have to set an appointment up after.
Oh my God, I would love that.
Yes.
And so this client and she and I were both on the medicine, and now I'm tapping into her body, and it's beautiful because everywhere I touch, I can feel the stiffness, I can feel the locked, I can feel how to get the whole flow back, and like the body speaks to me. Normally the body speaks to me, but it's like taking that and amplifying it by like 1,000. And so I'm in it and just, okay, all right, cool. We got the back flowing. Oh, wait, why is the shoulder still stuck? Okay, let's go to the shoulder and unstick that. And she had specifically like a hip problem. And so, and I loved working on this girl because she's received a lot of massages. She's an athlete. She was just down. And I'm in her hip, with my knuckles, and I'm in there and I'm just holding, and it's so tight. And then all of a sudden, I have my eyes closed. I'm focused on sending the energy. I'm focused on my breathing technique. And all of a sudden, there's just this explosion where like this lotus rose blossoms. And all of a sudden, I start crying, and she's crying. And we just like this release of that somatic intelligence that was in her hip. This thing she's had bothering her for so long just exploded and released. And beautiful.
And I love how the body gave you this, like, connected to the mind and to the imaginary mind, where it could really see this flower blossoming open. Like, that imagination, it's so powerful because, like, it's reality, right? Like, it really feels like a flower just blossoming open once that is released, once all that junk is, like, done.
Gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. And that area is not quite the womb, but we carry so much emotional stuff in our hips, and it supports the womb. So I think for me, that's why the flower thing was so beautiful. But
so amazing. Great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you do any plant medicine work?
I do. I'm not a pro at plant medicine like you, but I definitely desire to do more. I microdose on mushrooms. Right now I'm on a journey with Bufo, actually. Ooh. So I've been doing it every couple of months, like in smaller doses, and kind of getting the doses a little higher. And just so you know, like, Bufo has this reputation of, like, you go big and you go, like, all the way out there, and sometimes you forget, or it's feeling intense, or it feels like you're dying, and all these things. But when you do bufo in low doses, like it's so magical and beautiful. You can surrender and you totally go, like, especially for like us, like for me, the veil's thin, like the other, it's right there. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't need much to connect to it. And so my small doses like takes me there pretty quickly. And I've had just the most profound experiences. My last one that I had 2 times ago, I was with a group of my soul family and they're all holding me there, and Brandon was serving me, and I went in, I took it, and he was like, be free. He said, trust and be free. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go higher this time. I'm really gonna go in. And it's hard to describe, but it was like this guttural cry that came out of my whole body, like literally from my womb to my crown of the head, cracked open, guttural cry came out. Because it was so beautiful. It was just like, how have we forgotten this? And I cried for everyone that forgets, including myself, you know? Like we forget and we remember and we forget, and it's this spiraling action of contraction and expansion. But it was this beautiful release. And then once I let that cry go for like everyone that forgets, it was like complete merging with God, source, divine consciousness, whatever, and whoever you want to call it. And it was like love making, and not like you're having sex, but love making with this beautiful energy that's in and around and all around us. And it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. And that's on low dose.
Wow.
Yeah. So you don't need to fully blast off. And I'm working my way, but it's like the potency of this medicine, when you do it set in setting, right facilitator, right mindset, right intention, it can take you to really beautiful places.
Now, I'm also going to... Bufo is the same thing as 5-MeO DMT.
It has 5-MeO DMT in it. So 5-MeO DMT can be served like just on its own, which is usually formulated in a lab, where Bufo has bufotiny and 5-MeO DMT and some other like compounds.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'm also doing that with Brandon.
Yes! Amazing.
This coming weekend.
Beautiful.
So... anything I should look out for, think about?
I would say you're already so connected. You're doing mushroom work and all that. So you already know. You already have been to different dimensions and fields and realms and things.
Wildly different dimensions.
Yes. And so this can really just takes you straight there. Okay? I would say go in with an intention, but then let the intention go. Kind of like, you know, it's like, I have an intention, but I'm also open to whatever comes. What you're going to need a lot of is your breath. Yes.
Good thing you just trained me in that.
Yes. A lot of breathing, a lot of slow exhalation. Just keep breathing through it because it gets intense. But other than that, it's just breathe and surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love to do, is sort of show up with that. Maybe I have a loose intention, but 90% of the time I show up with my intention is to receive whatever download I need and to release whatever I need to release.
Yeah.
And it sounds super vague, but like it's really a powerful way to show up to ceremony, because you don't always know what you need. But the medicine does.
Exactly. And it's that attachment where you could actually get blocked. Right? If you're attached to a certain way of how you want it to be, then you're focused on that and it doesn't go that way, it turns into a bad trip, right? So it's if you open and surrender with the intention in the background, you're likely going to have a better trip, a better medicine journey.
Oh, yeah. I did a heroic dose in Guatemala this last trip.
What's a heroic dose for you?
Well, the pure definition of a heroic dose, I believe, is like 5 grams or more. So this last one, I did 8 grams.
Okay.
And I had this beautiful experience where I turned into just the light that makes up consciousness and was floating in the universe as a cosmic ball of consciousness, and got to construct a new timeline, and literally felt myself shift out of this one and click into another one. And it was so wild and it was so beautiful. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, oh wait, is that really the timeline? Like I made some decisions for myself that I was like, that's not really what I want. Those are really unlikely outcomes. And like,
interesting.
Ironically, they've all come true since then. So the 2 days later, I was like, okay, I'm going to do another heroic dose, and I want to tap back into creating my consciousness and shifting timelines, and because I want to make a timeline that I would really desire, not this like random one of things that like I don't think are really going to happen. And I know what I want to do. And I took another 8 grams and I barely went anywhere. And instead, I was so wildly uncomfortable in my own body and my own skin.
Wow.
And I'm in the most beautiful place on earth. I'm at Lago de Atitlan. I'm out on my deck looking at the ocean. The place that I have done most of my heroic doses. And there I am, just like skin itching, like, how do I get out of this? And it was, I finally was like, okay, like the crickets aren't doing it for me. Let me put on music that makes me comfortable. And as soon as I released into like stopping to trying to force this experience, I was able to calm down and have, it was a good practice for me too as a facilitator, being like, what do you do when it starts going wildly wrong? And so it's just a perfect example of, I had these very clear intentions of, this is what I have to do on the medicine this time. And the medicine was like, nope. How about you're facing all these things you're uncomfortable with? Let's make you really uncomfortable and have you sit with that.
And that, so you were bringing up medicine woman earlier on, and that is another piece for me of the medicine woman. It's like someone who goes into her own experiences and heals herself, maybe with support of others, but her approach is from an embodied place. Like, she's done her work. She's continuing to do her work. Her work never ends. And that's it right there. It's like you were asked to do a little bit more of your work in that moment through the medicine. And you did it, right? You surrendered to it. You figured it out, and you allowed the medicine to do what it needed to do. And you come out embodied, and you're like, okay, now I know when this happens to my clients, I know how to guide them because you've had the experience. And that for me is like very medicine woman style.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that, because it's a nice reminder that, like, to facilitate a plant medicine for someone, you need to have done it a ton of times. So that, like, when people are having an experience, you easily know, or you can divinely tap into what's going to help bring them out of it. And since you're usually in the medicine with them, that you can actually work from a place of being in the medicine. And I have noticed that I can take really large doses and still show up in an embodied way for others, which to me just kind of aligns it all.
So beautiful. Power woman.
And so you've been to Lago de Atitlan as well, Guatemala. How did you discover Guatemala?
So I facilitate 200-hour yoga trainings through like an international school. I'm an independent contractor and one of our locations is in Guatemala at Mystical Yoga Farm.
Cool.
So it's a permaculture farm where, like, no flushing toilets, completely eco-friendly, like not 1 ounce of plastic goes to waste. Like, they try to be plastic free, but it's almost impossible. And everything that comes in that's like not of the land gets built in like bricks, and it's like reused, and it's beautiful. The whole land is ceremony. Like, there's always someone playing music, there's always a cacao ceremony or a fire ceremony, and it's really just a magical healing place. So I ultimately found it because I was asked to travel there to teach a 200-hour yoga training. So I go there maybe like every other year right now. I won't be going there next year, but I just got back and it was really great. And that lake, her spirit is just in and of itself. You don't even need to take anything. It's just like, whew, she's got a lot to say and a lot going on.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
I love, at my retreat center, one of the things they put in their books is they suggest that you go out and have a conversation with the lake. And so I would always take a paddle board out there and sit there and talk to the lake and profess my problems, profess my hopes, ask for help, and then dunk in the water in that cleansing process and come up just in tears, bawling, like just being held by that powerful space.
It's the spirit of that lake, the spirit of water.
I love the spirit of water.
Yeah, same.
And where else do you hold trainings? You also go to Peru.
Yeah, so my 200-hour yoga trainings, Guatemala, Peru, Costa Rica. The school has locations all over. Those are the main ones that I like to go to. And then soon I'll be going to Portugal.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't know Portugal was like a spiritual place.
Wherever locations that they find, they usually are tapped into like some sort of sacredness of the land. So I haven't been to this location yet, but I know it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. And what's your favorite part of the work you're doing right now? What do you lean the most into?
Out of all the things that I do?
Yeah.
You know, they're all so special to me and so unique. And for a while, I've been a yoga teacher for 11 years, like yoga and pranayama, that sort of energy healing. And it was really hard because I wanted to bring all these other things in. And I was like, do I need to let go of this identity of a yoga teacher? And it was really hard for me to like figure this out. Like, do I let this go? Like, I don't want to only do this, but I don't want to. And it was just like literally a year of my life of like, but ultimately I just realized like it all blends together. Like it's all in and of the same purpose and of the same service, which is to heal and to reconnect to ourselves. So, but right now what I'm really, really loving is trauma work, breath work, trauma work. The alchemy of embodied healing is my approach to full integrated healing, where we're working beyond just the mind. We're going into the energy, we're going into the soul, we're going into the body, we're going into our trauma, we're going into our inner child, and we're connecting all these different parts of our consciousness that are fragmented and disassociated and somewhere out here, yet we're navigating from these places unconsciously, and it's ultimately a dysfunction in our life because we're not even aware of it. So shadow work, embodied shadow work, and just taking all these elements and these pieces and bringing it into one place so that you can do the work with all of it layered upon layer upon layer. And that's the alchemy of embodied healing for me. It's like we can't just do somatics. We can't just do the mind. We can't just do plant medicine all the time. Like there has to be these different pieces to it. And so how can we bring that into a more integrative healing practice?
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that you are alchemy. Also, that's
Yes.
one of my companies now
So
too,
funny.
alchemy healing and integrated wellness. So same path. I love you.
We've totally got this.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point. Like so much of society has focused on let's pay attention to the body, right? That's a concept everyone understands. Move your body.
Yeah.
You'll feel good. Take care of your body. Put good things in your body.
Yes.
Cool. Now we've slowly started to accept, the mind is really important.
Yeah.
Take care of your mind, talk to somebody, do some mental healing. And now I feel like society's getting into like trauma work and what that means.
Yes.
And we've started to go into meditation, but like it's a triangle, right? It's all equally important. So connecting those parts for healing, because one day you might need more trauma work. One day you might need more movement. One day you might need more body work. One day you might need to cry.
Exactly.
For reasons you don't even understand.
And you don't have to know why. Well, in our human experience, like it's the triangle, right? Like our human experience is mind, body, and soul. That's literally the experience of our humanness. Yeah. So if we focus on just one, like that triangle is no longer, it's not equal, it's not even. And I think right now the buzzwords are trauma. And sometimes buzzwords might like throw people off, but I think that it's important that trauma is being used so much right now, because we all have trauma, whether small T trauma or big T trauma, it is affecting our life in some way. And so the more work we do around it in slow steps, like in titration, like slowly going into these parts of ourselves that we were afraid of in a way that is titrating, slowly starts to bring ourselves back to that center, grounded, all-knowing self.
And what is small T trauma and big T trauma?
Small T trauma can be like developmental trauma in relation to having our needs met and our emotions met as children. So it's like between the ages 1 and 8, if you didn't have co-regulation between your primary caretakers and they didn't support you, and like you're angry, okay, let's work through this anger, or you're sad, let's work through this sadness, or you have a temper tantrum, it's like you're wrong and you're shamed for it, and now you're put in the room and you're punished for that. That's all smaller T trauma. It's emotional trauma. And again, between those ages of 1 and 8, if you didn't have that co-regulation and that support, you've literally developed survival mechanisms that are now acting as a dysfunction in your adult life. And you didn't even realize it just from those short amount of time, 8 years on this earth, which is not that long. You know what I'm saying? And so that kind of stuff, it's big T trauma would be like a big car accident or some sort of sexual abuse. Not one or the other is less or more important. They're just different energies of the field of trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And do you find, I feel like we're much more readily able to identify like the big T. Those are much more apparent.
Yes.
And the little T are the ones that were like, oh, but I was a kid. It doesn't really matter. Or, you may not identify that sometimes it's not just like a major incident where like that one time your parents punished you, but it can be those reoccurring little things that over time build up trauma.
Yeah. And that's ultimately the result of small T trauma happening over and over and over again, where you're like, it's not a big deal. Like, I have a client that's like, her go-to story was, it was just tough love. That's just how I grew up. It was tough love. And so she's just kind of settled on that being okay, but not realizing like she's actually holding all of this emotional pain around it and acting and having these certain behaviors that she doesn't want to have, but because she hasn't dealt with this other stuff that happened as a child. Even though, it's not like she was physically abused, the mental and emotional abuse and neglect is just as big as having the physical abuse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've done some powerful healing this year on past relationship stuff, which I had really put off. I was healing a lot of other things, like relationship. I'm not even in one. I haven't had a boyfriend in 4 years. Like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But some of that I was shocked to when I really started doing the digging recently, that it went back to like a boyfriend from 15 years ago.
Yep.
Who just essentially emotionally traumatized me, and that he was always going to leave. And then I just have always shown up every time I date someone, like any minute they're going to walk away, or anytime I feel like any minute they're going to walk away, I'm just like not the human being I show up to the rest of the world as.
Yep. And that's trauma. That's your experience intelligence. And so what happens is we have our analytical intelligence, and we have our experience intelligence. And our experience intelligence, if we have not done the work, will gravitate towards the same kinds of people that feel familiar from when we were children. And it's just that intelligence. It's like, oh, I know this. I'm going to gravitate towards this. And this is where we kind of do need more of our analytical mind, because then it's like, okay, well, is this actually what I desire for my life right now? And that's when we have to go into like the analytical and the analyzing of like, is this the same experience that I'm trying to create again? Or can I break the pattern here? And so it's like working with these two intelligences as we have this whole life experience. It's really important.
Really important.
Yeah.
Did you have some sort of like big moment, big breakthrough that drew you to this and to share this work?
A big one. I've had many of them.
Right.
So to choose one, I was in a relationship for a very long time, 4 years, one of my relationships for a long time. And that was a very abusive relationship, not physically, but like in every other way possible. Complete manipulation, emotional, mental abuse. And that for some reason felt like that I should be here. Like this, of course, I like excuse after excuse for this person, and he has also changed my life in so many ways, and he's actually passed on and is someone that guides me now.
Oh, wow.
Because he's doing his soul work in the other realms. I'm connected to him on a San Pedro journey, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. Whole nother story. But I think that's where I really started to dive into my trauma work. We came out here to California together, and long story short, a big thing happened, and I was just like, that was like my final straw. And I was like, no way, there's no way I could possibly go forward anymore. And I had no one at the time. Like, I moved out here, no friends yet, no job, no family, nothing. And I just was like, I have to make a change. Like, there's something out of alignment here. And then I slowly started. I think the first thing I ever did in this sort of realm was like Landmark. Have you heard of Landmark?
No, what's that?
It's like very kind of Buddhist approach to healing and changing your mindset and all these kinds of things. Like yoga was for sure number one, but this took me a little bit deeper because it was like coaching. But that was my biggest breakthrough, was what happened in that relationship, which I don't want to share here right now, but
Sure.
It was a huge moment where I was just like, my heart, when I finally realized the big picture, my heart fell to my stomach, and I was like, I need to make a change right now. And from there, it was like little moments of healing and aha moments and awarenesses and taking responsibility for myself, like getting myself out of the victim role was where I really started to take my power back.
How beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of people play and find themselves in the victim role?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not to shame that part, because that part is there for a reason. Like, it's hurt, it's in pain, it's whatever, whatever it might be. But that victim role is that familiar experience that they're wearing. And so they're going to keep calling in the people that are going to keep them in that victim role. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's that experience intelligence to go, oh no, I'm a victim. I'm going to call in people to keep affirming that I'm a victim until you see it and get yourself out of it.
Right. That makes sense. I see my friends who are not necessarily doing the same work as me, or my community I've built here now in Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
The friends I've sort of left behind, especially I lived in Hollywood for 11 years. There's a lot of people trying to do the work, pretending to do the work, not necessarily doing the work, that I see still suffering. And I think what I find so interesting about this like trauma and healing work is it's not all one size fits all.
Not at all.
And there's so many different options for how to heal yourself that like my policy is like, let's just start throwing it all at the wall, like spaghetti, like you're testing if it's done and see what sticks.
Yeah. Because
that for me was what really changed my life.
Yeah.
Was like, okay, let's try meditation. Cool, meditation's great. And now I'm stuck. And meditation only did so much. Okay, now mushrooms are great. And now I'm hitting a plateau with mushrooms. Where do I go next? Oh, look, there's breath work. What was that? Okay, now there's energy healing, and now there's story work, and now there's womb. Like it just seems endless.
Yeah. That's the beauty of it. It's because our consciousness, it's like titrating your entire life, right? It's like your consciousness slowly opens up and it's ready. Like in the beginning, could I have been ready for breath work? Heck no. Like I would have been like scared out of my mind, right? My first beginning parts of my healing journey. But that's my experience. So it's like once your consciousness opens up, your frequency radiates at a certain level, and you call in other things that you're ready for, that you're ready to remember, that you're ready to heal. And that might require now medicine work or energy work or womb healing, whatever it might be. But it really is divine timing. Like I always say, we're always like, oh, but I want to be there right now. Like right now, I just want to be right there.
Yeah.
And like once you get there, if you like actually look back and you're like, I would not have been ready for this last year or 5 years ago. Like it was meant to be right now.
Absolutely. Oh, that was like me in heroic doses of mushrooms. Once I did my first heroic dose, I was like, whoa, this is not a starter dose.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But also it's easy to reflect back on, like, I would say I've been really doing the work on myself for the last like 6 years.
Yeah, beautiful.
Deep work, and the things that I do now I didn't do then, like how shocking breath work has only come into my life in the last year. And that's so beautiful. And what do you think that sounds like to someone when you start to get a calling for someone? What does that look like if you're that person and something calls to you?
Like you're like, oh, I'm all of a sudden I have this idea that I should try breathwork, like that kind of calling. I would say listen to it, because that ultimately is like, it's a trusting of your soul. It's a trusting of your body. It's like, even if just notice, is your mind trying to create stories to get you out of it? Because that's what will happen. It'll be like, oh no, but I've heard scary things, or I heard this and blah, 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 blah. And then the mind takes you out of it. And the mind's going to do that. It's going to go to worst case scenario. So how can we just bring the mind back and find a way to settle the mind? Go back to the body and where you first felt that like nudge. Because you feel it in your body, right? Your stomach might get butterflies, or your heart might feel really open. And you're like, ooh, yeah, I want to try that. And like you notice a person's body posture changes, and then the mind goes, and it's like, oh wait, but I'm kind of scared, right? But it's like that first initial reaction, I would say trust that call, because that opportunity is there for a reason.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also when someone gets that calling, they start to notice it popping up easily. Like the barriers to attaining that are significantly diminished. When I got the call for breath work, I had a tarot reader in Guatemala tell me she felt like I needed to pursue breath work.
Interesting.
And so I was like, okay, I've heard that a couple times now. I'm in Guatemala, might as well.
Yeah.
And I saw the owner of my retreat like a couple hours later, and I was like, hey, how are you today? And he was like, oh my God, I just did the most amazing breathwork session.
And then you'll get all the synchronicities, and you're like, okay, I get it.
And And so I was like, with who? Can I go to them? And sure enough, it was Bishop. And so did my first breath work. And I was like, whoa, powerful. And now a year later, I come home from Guatemala having done another breath work. And I'm like, man, I think I might like to get training and being a facilitator. Totally. I think that would complement. And then like within 2 days, one of my friends messaged me your course. And
chills.
Yeah, like you weren't on my radar. Behind the lids was like, oh yeah, I've got to find time to go there sometime with all this time I don't have.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was immediately like, the price is too much. I can't take 6 days off work. And then I sat with it and I was like, why am I just saying no?
Right away. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, could I? Should I? This price is actually better than every other breathwork class I've seen where I've gone, the price is way too much. I'm not ready to spend $5,000 and go to Costa Rica for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, I did mushrooms on it. And I was like, my intention for the ceremony was to come out deciding whether or not I should do the breath work. And
wow. And it was a yes.
Yeah. And I emerged and I was like, oh yeah, it's a fuck yes. I'll figure it out. And the timings worked where I was like, okay, I don't have to take 6 days off work. I can like work after a couple days.
And that's the thing too, is like, I'll figure it out. It's like, it will always all get figured out. Like if it's truly meant to be, it all just starts to fall into place and the puzzle pieces start to come together and they start to click and you're like, oh wow, how did that happen? And here I was, my mind was taking me out. It was creating all these stories, all these scenarios of what wasn't even actually true, right? Because the mind's going to go into like all the stories and it's like, can I pause and do I have evidence that this thought is true? Like, is there actual real life evidence? Most of the time the answer is no.
Right.
So
have you heard some like ridiculous stories from people about why they're scared to show up and do the work?
Oh yes, I mean there's always the money thing, like I can't afford this, I've never invested in myself in this way, you know, they put their money in other places, which is always so interesting to me because I've always been the opposite. I'm always like, I want to invest in my healing, in my growth, in my evolution on this planet. There's time is a big one. Like there's not enough time. I don't know if I can make it. All that whole thing. And we all battle with time. It's one of my big ones too. But there is, if you make the time, if you really want it, the time is there for you.
Yeah.
If you know what you want. Money, time is an excuse or just getting in their way, you know, it's just really a roadblock. It's a block in their mind. And I'm just going to kind of steer off here. When we think of blocks, we always think of, I want to get rid of that block. I want to move it out of the way and get rid of it. But it's actually the block itself and the belief behind whatever that block is that is your superpower, that like is your medicine, that is your healing. So rather than going through the block, can you use the block to direct you to the vision that you want?
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as like if anger is here and you're like, I'm running away from anger, I don't want to feel anger, it's like it's going to get bigger and louder. If you go towards the anger, it's going to soften, eventually collapse. It's the same thing. So it's like we're not trying to get rid of anything. We're trying to move towards it, integrate it, become into our wholeness. I just had to throw that in there really fast.
I love that you said that.
And I think just overall, the biggest thing that blocks people is fear. You know, like, can I do this? Am I worthy? There's a lot of unworthy experiences in this time right now that I'm working with my clients. It's like I just don't feel worthy enough. So
I totally see that. And one thing I like to challenge people with is like, if you knew in advance that this was the thing that was going to work and make you feel completely different, feel how you want to feel, wouldn't you find the time and find the money?
100%.
I mean, I look at some of the things that worked for me that I put off, you know, maybe from like threw my back out and for months put off going to this one healer because I thought he was too expensive. And then I went and I walked out of his office without pain for the first time in 3 months. And I was like, I can't believe I wasted 3 months not going.
Exactly. That's such a good example right there. It's like, it will come. If it's needed, it will always come. Yeah. Always.
And it might be something that like you're nervous to try. Like my best friend offered me story work because that's a practice that she does. And I took that past relationship there and we analyzed the story behind it. And I was sort of like, you know, I've done a lot of writing. I'm a writer. I don't know how powerful it's going to be. But the way that the breath was incorporated and down regulating every word, every sentence of what I wrote I had just the biggest breakthroughs where I ended up running around her apartment and screaming out the windows like, it wasn't me. Like, it had nothing to do with me. Like, I had this major breakthrough about the whole thing where I'm like, if I had known that was going to work, I would have let her sign me up way sooner.
Totally. Because you can break free. It's like we're holding... I think there's an unconscious attachment to our pain as well. Mm-hmm. It's a familiar... Again, it's that familiar feeling. It's like, do I deserve to be happy? Do I even know what that feels like? No, I feel like this is where I need to stay. There's an attachment to it. It's very unconscious because consciously I'm telling you, I want out. I don't want this anymore. But then it's like, oh, but I can't do it because X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And it goes back to that unconscious attachment of it. And right, like you could have been free from that however many months or years ago. And right now the timing was perfect.
Right.
But it's mostly that fear and that sense of unworthiness.
Do you see a difference in how men and women show up to approaching healing trauma?
Oh, boy. Yes. Well, this is hard because I work primarily with women. Mm-hmm. One-on-one is my work is with women. I'm a women's embodiment mentor. And I have men that come into like my cacao ceremonies and my breathwork classes and things like that. It is different. I think right now, women are doing work that I see, like big, deep work. I'm not saying men aren't, but they're going really, really deep into their stuff. And they're breaking down all this stuff around their emotions and feeling ashamed of them, ashamed of their past, ashamed of how they feel. And it's hard to, again, really say because I only work with men in group and it's not a lot of processing in those specific groups that I'm facilitating with men. But I know that the desire is there for both ends. Mm-hmm. And right now, because I'm doing so much work with women, I just see that happening more. But I know men are doing the work. I know there's other men doing it with other men. So I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah, me too. Mm-hmm. One of my friends posted this article that was in like Psychology Today or something that said it was like a analytical article about how men are getting more depressed because there's more single men than there are women because women have done more work on themselves and like men aren't meeting the standards.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, that's a deep dive on a science article. But it said something too about the standards have risen. And so I hope to empower more men by these conversations that you can also rise. Like you don't have to feel like your power has been stripped away because women are rising, but like we would love for you to rise also.
We don't want, it's not about like breaking down this patriarchal system, which is also in women as well, and like just completely diminishing the men. We want men to rise with us. This is about a collaboration of living in harmony. And I'm so glad that Psychology Today actually put that out there because that's what I see. I see the women really doing the work, like going deep and just rising up. And it's like stagnation kind of in the masculine world right now. And I do know that a lot of them want it. And I think what I personally think is that the resources are not there as much as for women right now. Like there's not enough men facilitating healing men's circles or one-on-one things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like I'm seeing a lot more with women and not with men. And I think if there was maybe more programs, more courses, more things that were available, hopefully they'd be more enticed to go in, have that bigger desire.
Yeah, I hope so too. I do a lot of work with men, but
that's great.
Normally it's not like like I wish I could advertise like I help men heal. But there's a lot of women who need healing too, and I really don't want to alienate anyone from the healing process.
Yeah.
Based on what I do, but I love when they come and they are just curious.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're like, I don't know that I need all that. But then as you slowly start to scrape away the layers, they're like, wait, I can do what? Wait, I can do what? And finally finding themselves in a safe container where they're not judged and they're just embraced with supported love. Just from a healing perspective, facilitator perspective is groundbreaking for a lot of them.
Yeah. And that's what they need. They need that safe container just as much as we do. That soft place to land to do their healing. It doesn't have to be so tough, and that's necessary at times, but like we need to break down some of those walls so that we can get into those deeper, tender places.
Yeah. Do you do any work virtually?
Yes, I do. I see some clients virtually. I do programs and courses virtually. So I do a blend of both in person and virtual. Yeah.
Cool. How could someone find you to work with you from anywhere in the world?
Well, my Instagram, just Nichole, Nichole, Nichole Ann Ferro, or my website, which is just my name as well, NicholeAnnFerro.com. And those are probably the two places you can find me online right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have those linked up in the show notes.
Awesome.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that we didn't touch on?
No, I felt like that was broad and deep and juicy, and it was so good to be here with you and to just have this conversation. It was so fun. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and review this podcast wherever you're listening. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me. Until next time.